So what's one of those this is fine until it really isn't situations that you see all the time with ERP?
Almost always a compliance issue. That's always an issue for every business, is making sure that you're compliant with regulations, even if you yourself don't necessarily agree that they're absolutely required. And very often the thing that kind of tips it is the end of another audit that they've managed to scrape through by the skin of their teeth by somebody exceptional in the business, pulling together spreadsheets and documents and rifling through paper documents in filing cabinets for 4 hours when the auditor arrives in the morning. And then suddenly there's a point where it just becomes untenable, and the business just says, well, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? I remember working with a food customer who had, one guy in the business who was truly exceptional. He was able to find pretty much anything in the business because he knew everybody in the business, knew every product inside out, knew everything. They supplied some of the big supermarkets. One of those supermarkets turned up in the morning and said, right, here's a product, do me a product trace, tell me everything about it. And that's it. The guy's out of the business for 4 hours. Whereas if they had the systems to do it, and in fact, this is where they ended up, the company comes in and says, do me a trace on this. And they were able to run a single report, provide everything to the supermarket. There you go, here you go, job done. And it's a 5-minute job that can be done by anyone, meaning that they can use this guy to move everything else along in the business. So I think there is a point, I think, for every business where what they are doing suddenly becomes unmanageable. And I don't think it's sudden in the sense that they suddenly realize they can't do it anymore. But I think there's a point where there's a general agreement within senior people in the business that it's just not sensible to spend that much time rifling through paperwork and trying to fix spreadsheets that, somebody built 20 years ago and nobody really understands anymore. And that's one of the major issues that we see.
I guess it's always a case of things can be better.
Yeah, of course. You can always do things faster or more automated or, easier from a user perspective. But there's always a case, I think, and there's always a point where everybody from a senior perspective sits around a boardroom table and says, this report is taking far too long to get, or that report's taking far too long to get, or, we're being asked to report what our sustainability credentials are, and we're not tracking that in any one single logical place. And that's where systems projects often come from, is it's more a case of the recognition that actually the kind of scaffold that you've got in place is really starting to wobble with what you're asking it to do. That's the big difference.
I guess there's also people risk involved in that as well. If you've got one person that's so well educated in their job and they leave or they go off sick, especially in compliance areas, that's going to cause further problems as well. Yeah,
of course. And don't get me wrong, manufacturers are aware of this and have been for many years. But what we do have to do, and I think one of the things that you do benefit from having a more modern business system with, is simply the fact that you are going to appeal to, a newer generation that are a bit more au fait with technology. And it also gives you a view of what skills you actually need in the business, rather than it just being a bit of a guess and a succession plan on a spreadsheet.